Hello and welcome to another episode of Damn Interesting Week. We are so glad you've decided to join us. My name is Jennifer Lee Noonan.
I'm Angela Epley.
I'm Spurr-Chen.
I'm Bradley Calhoun.
And this was a damn interesting week. So let's get started with our first link.
First link. All right, from Science Alert, jellyfish snooze like we do, and it could explain the origins of sleep.
Okay.
Now, I've just got to read the opening verbatim because Tessa Koumanduros just nailed it. Even a boneless, gelatinous sack lacking a dedicated anus and brain needs its beauty sleep. So these jellyfish have neural networks lining the length of their bodies. And despite this simple neural arrangement, these water drifters have been observed sleeping, just like animals that do have nervous systems. But the evolution of sleep came with major fitness compromises, like reduced awareness of the environment, vulnerability to predation. That's according to chronobiologist Rafael Aguillon and colleagues in their paper. By the way, chronobiologist?
Yeah.
What a cool title. But what researchers are thinking is that there must be a powerful benefit to sleeping that counteracts the risks. So they looked at some specimens of upside-down jellyfish and starlit sea anemone. And what they saw is that they suffered an increase in neuronal DNA damage when deprived of sleep. That's something that researchers observed under both laboratory and natural conditions.
Yeah, but it's basically a little jellyfish Gitmo where they're like playing rock music at them to deprive them of sleep. Like, that's horrible.
They just had like Jerry Springer marathon running full hours, right? But what's more than this is that if their external environment caused increased neuronal DNA damage, they found that both of these jellyfish types slept even more. So the findings are suggesting that sleep may have evolved as a way to protect cells from damage. Now, when they treated the creatures with melatonin, the animals slept more, and DNA damage was subsequently reduced. So the researchers are thinking that jellyfish use a melatonin system like ours to synchronize their sleep cycles to daylight cycles. So it seems that even simple neural systems require rest to reduce the inevitable DNA damage that accompanies wakefulness, which you're awake and living in the world, yeah, you're doing damage.
Okay, so what creatures don't sleep? Is it amoebas? Like, how far back do we have to go before things sleep? We don't know. I'm not suggesting you should know the answer to this. I'm just like...
More research may be needed, but
right.
I mean, as far as looking at jellyfish as like one of the great ancestors.
Sure. Yeah. They're pretty ancient.
Even, I think there was another article that I may not be covering in this one, but it did look at how there are some animals like dolphins that have basically hemispheric sleep where like they can turn half of their brain off and sleep literally with one eye open.
I'm personally thinking that maybe I'm walking through every day hemispherically sleeping and just not knowing it. Like maybe we're developing that, and that's what's wrong with me.
You just need to spend a little bit more time on TikTok, and eventually half of your hemisphere will go to sleep.
There you go. That's good for me.
Next link.
Next link.
This article comes to us from The Guardian, and it's titled, "Did Leonardo da Vinci paint a nude Mona Lisa? I may have just solved this centuries-old mystery."
Escándalo!
Yeah, and that's not me. That's the author of this article, Jonathan Jones.
It's a little egotistical to put yourself in the headline, but all right.
Yes. And the byline does add, "It is one of the most tantalizing and entertaining puzzles in art, stretching from the Louvre to the Loire, and our critic thinks he has just worked it out." So the vibe is kind of like this section of The Guardian, the art and design column, was like, yeah, go ahead, Jonathan. Just give it a shot. Let it rip.
Right, buddy.
So I will read this from the third-person perspective about Jonathan. So, increased security after the recent heist has made the queues at the Louvre even slower. Yet, on this rain-swept, very wintry morning, no one grumbles. After all, the Mona Lisa is waiting inside for all these tourists who have come from the world over. But if the Mona Lisa can attract such attention fully clothed, what would the queues be like if she was nude? Strangely, this is not just amusing speculation, because in 18th century Britain, she was. This Mona Lisa sits in a chair with her hands crossed, and like the Mona Lisa in the Louvre, she smiles enigmatically. The print has a caption saying this is a reproduction of the painting by Leonardo da Vinci that hangs in the gallery at Houghton. Today, Houghton Hall stages contemporary art on its lawns, but back then it was famous for the oil paintings amassed by its owner, Britain's first and most corrupt prime minister, Sir Robert Walpole. Also, it's worth saying that Leonardo is spelled with an I as opposed to an E. Interesting little tidbit there.
Oh, well, then it's a totally different guy.
Yeah, different guy.
I mean, that makes sense.
Different Mona Lisa, different,
Yeah, that was the mommy Lisa.
Oh,
Yes.
all right.
The Houghton collection was cataloged by his son Horace, then 26, who apparently thought his father's Gioconda, on which this engraving was based, was the actual Mona Lisa. Quote, the Gioconda, a smith's wife, the handsomest woman of her time. She would often sit half naked with music for several hours together to be drawn by him. This is an interesting twist on the first account we have of the Mona Lisa, published in 1550 by the Florentine artist Giorgio Vasari. To elicit that smile, Vasari says, Leonardo always employed persons to play and jesters who might make her merry. In 1779, Walpole's art collection was sold to Catherine the Great, and today it hangs in St. Petersburg, no longer attributed to Leonardo, but to one of his unnamed 16th century followers. But if the work is by a Leonardo imitator, was there a nude Mona Lisa by him to imitate? It is one of the most tantalizing and entertaining mysteries in art, and Jonathan Jones thinks he may have just solved it. So, first, we need to go to Loire, where Leonardo spent his final years as French royal artist. And it was here that the artist himself left a fascinating clue. In October 1517, he had visitors to his chateau, Cardinal Luigi of Aragon and his cleric Antonio de Betis. Leonardo, records de Betis, showed them 3 paintings all hanging today in the Louvre. 2 were religious, John the Baptist and the Virgin and Child with St. Anne. The other was, quote, a certain Florentine woman portrayed from life at the request of the late Giuliano de Medici. It is generally accepted that they were being shown the Louvre Mona Lisa, but they don't seem to have been told the truth by Leonardo. A document in Heidelberg University proves this painting was begun in Florence 14 years before these chateau visitors saw it. It was a portrait of Lisa del Giocondo, wife of merchant Francesco del Giocondo, hence its alternative names, La Gioconda, Gioconde, Gioconde. Those sound different when you read them in spelling. Mona is short for Mana, the polite way to address a married woman in Renaissance Florence. Lisa, being middle class, would be addressed as Mona Lisa. So why did Leonardo mention Giuliano de Medici, the youngest son of Lorenzo the Magnificent, de facto ruler of the Florentine Republic? He certainly did not paint the clothes of Mona Lisa for Giuliano, but maybe Leonardo painted the naked version for the nobleman. In a chateau just north of Paris, there is a mysterious, quote, cartoon, kind of like, a pre-sketch, basically.
Right.
This cartoon, dated 1514, portrays the same nude model featured in the Houghton painting and has unmistakable allusions to the Mona Lisa. After technical analysis, the Louvre announced in 2017 that there was a strong evidence that it was at least partly by Leonardo, done with the left hand. Which, huge flex. Because this thing looks great still.
Well, and it feels like it's being done by somebody else. Sorry, never mind.
It's a stranger.
So the claim becomes all the more convincing if you look hard, particularly at the drapery that has his free and infinite suggestiveness. Even the spread and shading of her fingers is identical. The Mona Lisa's hands may not be central to her fame today, but in Renaissance Italy, their elegant positioning was widely imitated. The artist who drew the Chantilly nude doesn't just emulate all that, but replicates it perfectly. In other words, it seems highly probable that Leonardo, perhaps helped by his pupils, painted this nude Mona Lisa. But is there any more evidence? Jonathan Jones believes he's found a crucial clue hanging in plain sight in the Barberini Palace in Rome, a half-naked portrait by Leonardo's younger admirer, Raphael. Raphael and his team were creating a sensual, heated bathroom for the papal palace, adorning it with frescoes. Around 1520, Raphael portrayed a young woman sitting in a garden with her top off, except for a blue armband that says in gold letters, Raphael of Urbino. The painting is known as La Fornarina, the baker's daughter, after a legend that Raphael's girlfriend's dad was a baker. When Jonathan Jones, I know it's very prosaic, quaint.
And yet at the same time, kind of kinky. He literally put a wristband on her with his name on it.
Yes, also, that's a very good point. So when Jonathan Jones was investigating the decadent delights of high Renaissance Rome, he realized with a shock that this work is basically a nude Mona Lisa. Raphael is an impeccable artist, but not as wildly original as Leonardo. Instead, he learned from his elder imitating the Mona Lisa ever since he saw it in an early state in Florence around 1504.
Huh.
A number of paintings by Leonardo are lost, especially those that scandalized the devout. They include his erotic Leda and the Swan, believed to have been destroyed by a shocked French royal. This painting of a woman and her swan lover portrays the swan putting a wing around the voluptuous Leda as it whispers into or stimulates her ear. So, if Leonardo was creating such sublime eroticism as he worked on the Mona Lisa around 1504, it's no great leap to believe he created a nude version as well. In his notebooks, he boasts that while a poet can only describe a patron's lover, the painter can bring her to life. He even relates gleefully how a man once returned a painting he did of the Virgin Mary because it filled him with the wrong thoughts. And I'm getting a view into Leonardo that I did not know about. It's very interesting.
He's a little arrogant.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but apparently his naughty art was unsurpassed.
Yeah.
And this totally explains the Mona Lisa's smile, which is you should see the other one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I do recommend looking up the photos in the article because when you look at it, you're like, yes, that is extremely similar, in just so many, many ways.
I mean, could the baker's daughter have just been a really popular model?
That could be too, yeah.
Yeah, she could have gone all over town.
Yeah, she got around with all the paintings, yeah.
Her thing was staying really still and being painted for hours.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That is a skill. Listen.
It is true, yeah. It's a serious skill. Next link.
Next link.
All right, this comes from Vice. Maybe your chronologically late friend isn't rude. They just have time blindness.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be judgmental. It's fine.
We're
Keep
not
going.
trying to make you mad. It's a brain thing. Please tell me it's a brain thing.
Right. Yeah, we all have that person, or maybe we are that person that's chronically 5 minutes away for a half hour or so, right? Okay, so lately there's been an explanation floating around, and it's called time blindness. And it's made its way from clinical research to, most importantly, TikTok captions.
Yes.
Right.
Which raises a fair question. Is chronic lateness a neurological issue or a manners problem dressed up as one? So time blindness refers to not just being late, but the difficulty sensing the passage of time or estimating how long tasks take. It's closely tied to executive function of the frontal lobe and is commonly associated with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
So as Stephanie Sarkis, a psychotherapist in Florida, told the Associated Press, anyone can have issues with running late. Just with ADHD, there's functional impairment. It impacts family life, social life. It impacts work, money management.
Mm-hmm.
For Alice Lovett, a musician and group home worker in Liverpool, that impairment showed up early. She said, I just don't seem to have that clock that ticks in my head. All right, as a musician, maybe don't admit that one. She wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until her early 20s, which, different subject matter for women, is actually pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, she internalized her lateness as personal failure. To me, why can't it be both?
Right.
The concept itself isn't new. Russell Barkley, a retired clinical neuropsychologist at the University of Massachusetts, linked ADHD with time impairment decades ago, calling it temporal myopia. What's new is how broadly the label now gets applied.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, obviously, frustration creeps in, because not everyone has ADHD, and not everyone who runs late has ADHD. Jeffrey Meltzer, a therapist in Florida, encourages people to look at what's underneath that behavior. Some people avoid arriving early because they dread awkward small talk. To be honest, that's me. So here's my trick. I get there 10 minutes early and just hang out creepily in my car by myself.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I show up right on time.
Exactly.
Others feel overscheduled and steal that time where they can. This is like the impulse of revenge bedtime procrastination, staying up late to get some sense of control. Then there's the other category that's a little harder to talk about, entitlement. Because, even when time blindness is real, you do have ADHD, it doesn't erase the responsibility.
Right.
So Sarkis, who also has ADHD, is very clear about that. Accommodations help, but they don't cancel the impact on other people's time.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you don't make your own accommodations and start setting timers or do whatever you need to do, because like you said, it can be real and yet you can do something about it. In my experience, people will also start to accommodate for you, in that we had a girl when I was growing up who was consistently at least 30 minutes late, and we would just lie to her about what time we were going to meet. We would tell her 4 p.m. and all the rest of it would go, but really 4:30. Oh, yeah, okay. And then we'd all show up at 4:30 and it would be great. Like, you're just going to get lied to if you can't be consistent.
We call that an adjustment per person.
Yeah. So set your clocks early and don't be a dick.
Right.
On that note, next link.
Next link.
All right, this next one is a little unusual for us in that there's not a ton of narrative to it. It's mostly visual, which, makes it a not ideal choice for a podcast, but it is really fascinating, and I choose to believe that my descriptive abilities are up to the task. So it's from a YouTube channel called The Proper People, and their whole thing is exploring abandoned buildings. And yes, in most cases, they're clearly breaking in, but they really are just documenting. They're not damaging or stealing anything, at least not on camera.
Some of my favorite ghost stories comes from people like that.
Yeah, exactly. And the building they're exploring in this video is called the IBM Advanced Business Institute in Palisades, New York. Now, this is a large campus that was first opened in 1989 to serve as a corporate retreat for internal conferences, as well as a sort of resort where they could woo potential vendors and clients. And this concept was very big in the 70s and 80s, but IBM was a little late to the party with this particular building because by the late 90s, the internet had spread throughout the industry, and a lot of big meetings were starting to take place over digital conference calls or even video by that point. So by 2004, IBM shut down operations as a corporate retreat and instead began leasing out parts of the building as office space to other companies. And it did okay in that regard, but the whole point of locating the campus in Palisades was that it was a nice spot for a vacation, not a great commute. And then COVID hit, everybody went remote, and they never came back. And the thing is, if you remember, at least very early in the pandemic, there was still this sense of like, oh, this is going to be a short-term thing, maybe a few weeks. So nobody actually moved out. They just left everything exactly as it was. So this building is basically a 6-year time capsule at this point, which doesn't seem very long. And yet, as we'll see, things start to fall apart very quickly without anyone there to maintain them. And the cool thing about this video is they found a sort of extended advertisement from 1989 that was meant to convince CEOs that they should send their employees to these conferences so they could learn how to integrate IBM products into their own businesses. But that means we have footage of what the campus used to look like when it was new. And they've done a really good job here of finding those exact camera angles and giving you a really haunting before and after comparison.
Ooh.
Also, everybody's wearing 1989 business outfits. It's great. So they start by entering through a staff entrance into the basement, which contains the electrical system as well as the laundry facilities for the hotel side of the campus. And this place was bougie. Like, they had an Olympic-sized swimming pool and 4 racquetball courts. Like, it was nice. But you also have to have pretty significant infrastructure for that as well. So you get these massive ironing and folding machines. And there's this set of photos on the wall from what looks like a recent staff party. Like, the photos aren't faded or anything. They look brand new. But the surrounding environment looks like something out of a Silent Hill game. Because at some point in the last 6 years, the building either flooded or all the water from the pool drained down into the lower levels. And you can see this really clear water line up to about 2 feet off the floor. So you've got these storage shelves for like sheets and towels, and the top half looks completely clean and normal, while the bottom half is disintegrating and absolutely covered in mold.
Ooh.
And it's the dichotomy that really makes this more than just a standard abandoned building exploration, because parts of it look so pristine and other parts look like a war zone. When they get upstairs, for example, the first thing they come across is a vending machine, which has had the doors opened, but all the snacks are still inside with not a speck of dust on them. And being YouTubers, of course, they try to eat some. It doesn't go well, but nobody dies, at least, that we see. The hotel rooms also have all their little complimentary shampoo bottles. The beds are all made. There's tons of unopened alcohol in the restaurant. There's even a billiards table that looks like it was stopped mid-game. On the other hand, there's this carpet of dead leaves and branches throughout most of the open spaces because all of the decorative plants were real and they're all now very dead. Actually, though, they do manage to find one plant that still has a little offshoot of green leaves on it, sort of like reaching desperately toward the sunlight.
Aww.
And there's a couple of empty inverted water bottles in the soil where clearly someone has been through here and made this sort of like tiny benevolent offering, which again, it's a very different type of creepiness because it's not like nature taking back over. It's a human or maybe multiple humans keeping this one last survivor going for 6 long years.
I mean, you say creepy and I hear reverence. Come on now.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful, but it's also like, where are those people now?
Who's going out there? Right.
Yeah, exactly. And the guys making the video do debate whether they too should grab a bottle of water from the vending machine and keep the chain going. But if they do it, it's not on camera. Some other cool stuff they find behind the projector screen in one of the conference rooms, they find a set of slides, like old school plastic slides with pictures of very old IBM computers on them. So, like, you got to assume those were actually abandoned there when IBM left, which was long before the building itself was abandoned. So there's, like, archaeological layers to what they're finding. There's also a conference room that, like the billiards table, looks like it was literally being used for a meeting when everyone walked out. Like, there's notepads on the tables with writing, open water bottles. And, of course, because this is 2020 corporate America, there's even a case of unopened Monster energy drinks.
And dead prostitutes?
Yeah. Yeah, there's like Coke residue on the table. No. And finally, for one last symbolic discovery that's not too far off from what you just said, Bradley, apparently one of the businesses that was leasing the space toward the end was a medical training company. And they discover a room absolutely packed with fake skeletons. So, like...
Fake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true, because they're not, like, plastic Halloween skeletons. They're models that are meant to simulate real bone. So you can practice using the medical company's drills. So they really do look quite real.
Yeah, they look real. Yeah.
This is just where they huddled all of the employees at COVID and let them die and shut the door, and that was it. Anyway, the overall takeaway here is that this building has died multiple deaths over the years. And it's a long video, but it's worth a look because we don't yet get to see a lot of corporate decay. You know, we see a lot of abandoned theme parks, but abandoned office buildings is like the next thing on our horizon, I think.
Probably less ghosts in those abandoned offices.
Right. Well, yes, probably fewer people died in the office than on the roller coaster. But,
Maybe, right?
Maybe.
I have a friend who somebody did pass away at their company, and they're like, yeah, that office is spooky now. Like,
can you imagine? That's the worst hell.
Yeah.
Now you're stuck at work.
Yeah.
Indefinitely.
Yeah.
Places.
Of course, if you want to haunt some people, those are the people you want to make their lives difficult. So.
Fair.
Next link.
Next link. All right, from El Pai, we are going to reveal the secrets of the Washingtonia palm.
It has secrets.
Yes, the palm tree. The palm tree. You know what I'm talking about. Picture LA in your head, those giant tall palm trees. Yeah, that one. And they are among the most widely cultivated plants in the world, in part because they can thrive in complete neglect. There are 2 species in this genus, though we're going to see that the current classification is a little bit more complex. But for our purposes, we're going to talk about Washingtonia thilifera. It has a wide stem, a height that rarely exceeds 20 meters, and then the Washingtonia robusta, which has a slender, thin, and very tall stem, reaching up to 98 feet. Those are the Hollywood ones.
Wow.
So some specialized publications also talk about a hybrid resulting from those two called Washingtonia X filibusta, which is such a fun way of combining filifera and robusta, also because it's called Washingtonia, named after George Washington. Adorable. But all of these palms are native to California and Sonora in Mexico. You can usually find them thriving alongside cacti. Now, because they grow in a semi-arid climate in their native land with a lot of temperature fluctuations throughout the year, sometimes they can get periods of nighttime frosts. Sometimes they can get temperatures exceeding 113 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes, they can.
So they are both highly resistant to cold and heat, especially the regular Filifera, which can endure frosts below 14 degrees Fahrenheit once it's been acclimatized. Now, the petiole that attaches the leaf to the stem is often over a meter long. And if you ever, for whatever reason, decide to cut off a palm leaf, you need to be real careful because this petiole has a lot of thorns and it will tear you up. There's a picture in the article where it looks like animal teeth. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah. Our backyard neighbor, it's gone now, but it used to be a full height palm tree, and occasionally a frond would fall off of it in the wind and land in our backyard. And it was massive, and you had to put on gloves to move it to the garbage because it was so sharp.
So sharp, and it's just multiple, just lined with these little curvy, prongy teeth. And that's because they're really tall, they deal with a lot of wind. And also, the one unique feature about these palms is that the lower part of the trunk has a very characteristic widening shape. So these things are definitely built to have amazing stability against strong winds. And they do, in fact, flower. You may not notice because they're super tall and the flowers are not enormously big, but it has these long clusters of small, creamy flowers that appear usually between late spring and midsummer, and they give way to hundreds of seeds. The seeds are surrounded by a light, sweet pulp with a flavor similar to those from the date palm. Have y'all ever eaten a palm seed? I'm curious now, but the tiny seeds are also amazing at germination. The seedlings will frequently sprout in cracks in sidewalk paving, and these crevices give them ideal conditions for undisturbed growth.
Yeah, they kind of sound invasive. Like they're so hardy. It's like LA culture is going to spread everywhere, and so are LA palm trees. We're just going to have them everywhere.
I mean, you build a place with a lot of concrete, nature will find a way.
That's true.
Next link?
Next link.
This article comes to us from Nautilus, titled, "Your Face May Decide What You Like Before You Do."
Your face might decide.
We all subtly mirror the facial expressions of the people around us, smiling when they smile, furrowing our brows in concert, usually without even noticing it. This is known as facial mimicry, and it's thought to play a role in empathy and social connection. But what can this form of mimicry actually say about a person's preferences? To investigate this question, a team of scientists from Tel Aviv University paired dozens of strangers up in a lab and ran 2 experiments. In the first, one of the partners described 2 different films in short summaries. The other partner listened, watched the first person's face, and then decided which movie they most wanted to watch. Next, they switched roles. In the second experiment, both partners listened to recordings of an actress reading similar summaries of movies without any visuals to refer to. The movie summaries in each case were similar, with no obvious winner. While these experiments were underway, the scientists used sensitive sensors to track tiny muscles in the faces of listeners. Muscles that can't be seen in a mirror and that move without our knowing or even feeling it. After that, they analyzed both how much each person's face changed overall, as well as how much they mimicked the speaker's facial expression. What they found is that people's stated preferences tracked to the degree to which they mimicked the speaker's positive facial expressions, such as cheek raising, more than it matched their own facial expressions. That finding, published in Communications Psychology, held up across multiple forms of analysis and ways of crunching the data. Mimicry of negative expressions sometimes trended toward weaker preference, but those effects were less consistent. By contrast, the listener's own facial expression alone didn't predict preferences as reliably. Co-author Liren Amahai, a doctoral student, in a statement explained, "The study showed that we're not just listening to a story, we're actually being swept toward the speaker. This mimicry often happens automatically, and it can predict which option we will prefer long before we think about it in words. Facial mimicry, therefore, is not merely a polite gesture, but also a part of the decision-making system." What was most surprising is that this outcome held up even in the second experiment, where the listeners were unable to see the speakers' faces. It turns out that humans can hear a smile in someone's voice and can mimic it. So even when there was minimal social interaction with the person reading the movie summary and little expectation of polite behavior, the listener's mimicry of the speaker's facial expression still revealed their preference. Of course, the scientists point out the findings are correlational, and so don't show that mimicry causes preference, nor that listeners are being manipulated by the speakers. The study had some important limitations. The participants were all women, and the effects were modest. Also, past efforts to show that body postures and facial expressions influence our minds and emotions have at least been partially debunked. For example, one widely circulated 1988 study showed that if your mouth is arranged into a smile by holding a pen in your mouth, you will rate things as funnier than if your mouth is prevented from smiling. But a large multi-lab replication effort failed to yield the original effect, and a later meta-analysis found these effects to be small and variable. Another popular 2010 study suggested that power poses could change hormone levels and risk tolerance among women, but later work found that these gestures didn't have the effects the researchers initially claimed, instead only nudging self-reported feelings of self-confidence. But if the findings do end up holding up, they suggest our faces may know what we like before our brains do. And, just on vibes, it kind of makes some sense to me, right? Because you're not talking about, manipulating a facial expression. It's something you're already doing in concert or rapport with another human.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if you're talking to someone and they're feeling enthusiastic about something. You're going to start feeling that enthusiasm as well. It's a form of empathy.
Yes.
You're just not necessarily aware that your face is also participating in that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole mirror neurons thing is just the face is doing it too.
Mm-hmm. Which, just goes to show you should be enthusiastic about stuff because you're going to convince people if that's what your goal is. Keep a big smile on while you tell them the horrible news and maybe they'd be like, actually, that's great. I'm so happy to hear that.
Pro tips.
Exactly. All right. Well, that is all we have time for today. We're so glad you've joined us. Some of the articles we did not have time to get to today include Life with the Bees, Tiny retina implant helps blind patients read again, and the poison arrow technology of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. So all that and more, plus everything we talked about today, can be found on damninteresting.com. If you like our podcast and want to support us, you can do so at patreon.com/damninterestingweek. In the meantime, my name is Jennifer Lee Noonan.
I'm Angela Epley.
I'm Spurr-Chen.
I'm Bradley Calhoun.
And we hope you have a damn interesting week. Bye-bye.